Whether you're a Horizon veteran or this is your first time playing Zero Dawn, there are a bunch of things you'll want to know to have the most fun. Like, did you know that damage coils, not fire ones, are actually the best way to boost burn damage? Of course, fire coils do boost the damage over time dealt by the burning state, but even with a full set of the best fire coils in the game, you can only boost burn damage by 2.5 times the normal amount. But with damage coils, you can boost it by over 6x. This is why some people get confused when I say fire is super strong in Zero Dawn. You actually want to coil your hunter bow with some good damage coils to maximize burn damage, not fire ones. I'll show you exactly how elemental states work in a minute, but first I want to make sure you don't miss some super easy early XP. Each time you unlock a new ammo type by getting a new weapon, you'll get a tutorial for it in the quest menu. Completing it will net you a nice chunk of XP, but it's super easy to miss these or forget about them because you have to actually go into the menu and set each tutorial as your active quest, otherwise it won't work. And most people don't realize these tutorials are actually for each ammo type, not each weapon category. So for example, you'll get a tutorial for harvest arrows once you have a purple sharpshot bow, but you won't be able to get one of those until later in the game. So it's really easy to forget to grab this easy XP throughout your whole playthrough. It's also easy to miss out on some free resources early on. You'll start the game with 3 special tokens that you can trade to any merchant for 3 resource packs, including Karst, who you meet very early on during the Point of the Spear main quest. But even more importantly, make sure you talk to this merchant near the gate out of the Embrace to pick up the Karja Storm Ranger and Banuk Trailblazer outfits, along with the Karja Mighty and Banuk Culling Bows, all for free. It's also super cool that the remaster has added the Nora Lookout and Nora Longshot Bow, which were pre-order bonuses from the original launch, as well as a brand new outfit, the Nora Valiant, which is actually a really solid option early on since it has both some ranged and melee resistance. You can also grab all this free gear from Teb before the proving if you remember to check his inventory, or any merchant from the Embrace Gate onwards if not. And don't forget that every new merchant you meet will have a free sample box you can snag for some free resources. Well, except on Ultra Hard. No free sample boxes on Ultra Hard. But while you're still in the Embrace at the start, I would highly recommend doing the side quest In Her Mother's Footsteps, which you get from Thok, the guy with the injured leg near the river and the first Strider site. This quest gives you a permanent boost to your spear's damage, and because Aloy's early bows are really weak, you are going to want to use your spear quite a bit early on. The spear is less effective on Ultra Hard, but on any other difficulty, doing a heavy spear attack or two will knock an enemy down, which opens them up for a powerful critical strike once you have that skill unlocked, which, by the way, is the second skill I recommend you pick up. The first one I think you should get is Silent Strike. Silent Strikes are very similar to critical strikes, but are triggered from stealth while machines aren't aware of Aloy. Basically, as long as their eyes and their awareness indicator aren't red, you'll be able to take down most early machines with a single Silent Strike. So with a bit of patience and stealth, you can get through a lot of early combat encounters safely. Now, I know a lot of players love the lure call skill to bait a machine to come over for an easy Silent Strike, but even before you unlock it, you can achieve the same thing by simply throwing a rock at your feet. But when using the heavy spear attack in open combat to get those knockdowns, Aloy will close a much larger gap than you'd think. So don't feel like you have to be right up against a machine. The trick is to keep holding your movement stick or keys in the target's direction as if you were trying to run towards them the whole time Aloy is doing the attack animation. Using the spear early on is also good practice for learning enemy attack cues and when to time your dodges. Most enemy attack animations are multi-stage and extended, lasting longer and carrying them further forward than you might think. So it's a bit counterintuitive, but when you go to dodge, it's actually best to aim to dodge right past them in the opposite direction to get directly behind them. This minimizes your exposure, leverages the dodge's invincibility frames if you happen to bump into the enemy, and has the added benefit of positioning you behind them, which will often give you a clear shot at a component. Another trick I like to use is healing while dodging to stay mobile. Normally, Aloy will stop dead in her tracks every time you use the healing pouch or a potion, but if you hit heal while in the middle of a dodge, she'll start healing while still moving through the dodge animation, and then you can continue on without worrying about getting stuck motionless. I've got more combat tricks like that for you, but first, let's blast through some other key tips I want to make sure you have. Of course, to fast travel for free, you're going to want the Golden Fast Travel Pack, which is, confusingly, actually purple, but we just ignore that. To get it, you're going to need to hunt some animals, which is a habit you want to get into anyway because it takes a lot of animal parts to upgrade your ammo and resource pouches, which you definitely want to do to get more space for resources, gear, and increase the max ammo capacity of your weapons. One good way to find animals is to create a job for the item you want to buy or the pouch you want to upgrade, which will put a marker on the map showing you a good place to find that particular resource. A few good spots you can always find animals are in this forest south of the Devil's Grief Tallneck and over here both east and south of the lake that's southeast of Two Teeth. For geese, the area you go to for the Odd Grata errand has a bunch, and if you happen to have a sharpshot bow with harvest arrows, these actually won't alert other creatures, making it easier to hunt birds in particular. If you need some rats, there's a bunch in the cave Aloy falls into as a child, which you can find right over here. And regardless of the animal I'm hunting, I find it helpful to scan and tag them with the focus so I can keep track of them more easily while they run through grass and behind trees. Once you get a mount, you'll be cruising around the map much faster, and you'll find lots of campfires. Keep in mind, you don't actually have to perform a quick save at a campfire to unlock it. As soon as the new campfire discovered message pops up on screen, you've got it, so feel free to just fly by. Although, you do definitely want to quick save often, because if you die right after getting a bunch of loot, for example, you'll end up losing it. But I think most players don't realize that you actually don't have to stop moving during the quick save black screen. The screen goes black, but you can actually keep moving while it is. Oh, and did you know you can actually jump up onto your mount instead of interacting with it? That's a nice little trick most players miss. It's also really easy to accidentally burn through resources quickly by overcrafting. See, unlike the PS5 and PC versions of Forbidden West, any extra ammo you don't have space for when you craft will just be lost. So you want to avoid crafting ammo if you don't have room for the full amount the recipe yields. But if you are running a bit low on certain resources, a good trick is to use those harvest arrows we mentioned earlier, which are on purple sharpshot bows, to shoot detachable components off dead machines instead of directly looting the body. For example, shooting blaze canisters off a grazer and then picking them up off the ground will net you way more blaze compared to just looting the machine directly. Just make sure you coil the bow so the harvest arrow's tear stat is higher than its impact damage stat. In the late game, I actually like to have a second shadow sharpshot bow dedicated to resource harvesting set up with just tear and handling coils. I can just tap fire harvest arrows at machine components to tear them off really fast. Which reminds me, you can buy duplicate copies of weapons and outfits easily in Zero Dawn, which offers a nice way to have specialized copies of gear for different purposes. And by the way, farming blaze canisters with harvest arrows and then selling them is a good way to get some shards. Of course, you're also going to need to harvest lots of medicinal plants all the time. So here are a few good high density spots. The riverbanks and surrounding areas near the Nora hunting grounds and this merchant across the river is probably the best early spot. The next good location you'll come across is along the path leading up to the Day Tower Gate. There's also a bunch all around the outside of Meridian Village along the river, and probably my favorite spots that have a ton are on top of Nils Plateau in the Jewel, north of the Dual Scorcher site in the Frozen Wilds, and also around Long Notch in the Frozen Wilds. Speaking of the Frozen Wilds, don't forget that arguably the best bows in the game are up here, and you just need to find enough blue gleam to trade for them. The Frozen Wilds is tough, and even just getting to the first settlement can be challenging, but if you like getting overpowered early, you'll definitely want to pick up those bows. Another trick for getting good gear early is to farm purple coils from the scrapper piles over here at the back of this little valley in the Embrace. You can just run back and forth to the campfire and the scrap pile loot will respawn, giving you a high chance for 1 or 2 purple coils each time. So you can get some good coils really early, or easily later on as well. But either way, you might want to come back to the Embrace once in a while throughout your playthrough, specifically to visit Rost's cabin. I won't spoil why, but it's a nice detail I think most players miss out on. I'd also highly recommend that you actually pause on doing main quests around the time you get to Deep Secrets of the Earth. That one, along with the final 5 main quests after it, contain a huge amount of interesting stuff, and you're probably not going to want to stop once you start. So consider pausing before Deep Secrets and just go enjoy all the side content you want to do. There's tons of it, and side quests and other activities are some of the best content in the game. There's also a few settings you'll want to consider changing right at the start. Weapon wheel slowdown lets you change how much of a slow motion effect you get with the weapon wheel open, or turn it off entirely. entirely. But the big one that made it over from Forbidden West, which we were all hoping for, is pickup animations. Setting this to auto pickup lets Aloy snag medicinal plants and other environmental resources without an animation. It's also nice the co-pilot feature made it over, so if you want to help someone who's not as good at combat, for example, you can let them play and use a second controller to help when they're having a tough time. Zero Dawn already had the show headpiece toggle, but I think a lot of players didn't realize that they had this option to turn off outfit headpieces, so that's a nice one too. Over in the controls tab, I know a bunch of people will be happy to see motion aiming, aka gyro aiming, is here as well. You'll need a PS5 DualSense controller to use that, but if you're playing with another controller on PC, you might notice a big dead zone on your sticks. To fix that, you'll want to go into the Steam input settings and adjust the anti-dead zone values. I also noticed that we now have fully customizable controls just like Forbidden West, which is great to see. And down at the bottom, we've got the auto sprint settings if you want to use those. But let's get back to combat tips. Of course, you want to scan machines with the focus to reveal their weak points and learn what elements they're vulnerable to. But you might also want to do quick scans during combat to just highlight their components again and give yourself clear targets. Hitting components deals much more damage, and remember that the eye is a weak point on every machine that gives a really big damage boost. Hitting the eye is hard on most machines, but nailing it and hitting other components is much easier once you have the concentration skill, which lets you trigger a slow motion effect on your weapons, making them much easier to aim precisely. However, I see a lot of players waste their concentration charge. See, you can only trigger concentration when the meter is completely full, so it's best to only trigger concentration just before you're about to release your shot. That way it only uses a little bit and it'll be recharged much faster for your next shot. I recommend getting in the habit of trying to get close to where you want to aim without concentration and then trigger it just to make the final precise adjustment before releasing the shot. Now, if you're coming off Forbidden West, then you might know that the green rope caster isn't great there, but in Zero Dawn, it's way better. I would highly recommend grabbing it early so you can easily immobilize groups of machines. To fully immobilize a machine, you need to apply multiple ropes until the tie-down icon fills up all the way and you see a white circle appear around the edge. That circle is a timer, and it ticks down to show you how long until the machine gets free. If you leave a tied-down machine alone, it'll stay that way for a full 90 seconds. So this really gives you a lot of breathing room. However, as soon as you start damaging it, you'll see that circle timer degrade quickly. So you want to have a plan for what you're going to do with a tied-down machine. Either leave it to focus on others or get ready to deal a lot of damage to it before it gets up. A nice little tactic is to tie down a machine and then use sticky bombs on a blast sling because they have a few second delay before exploding, so you can easily and safely stack a bunch of damage. Tripcasters are also a lot more useful in Zero Dawn than Forbidden West. You can put down basically as many wires as you want, and you won't trigger them by walking through them. Don't forget, it can be smart to set them up a little higher by attaching them to trees or other structures so machines that like to jump still hit them. And keep in mind that both the Tripcaster and Ropecaster reticles will change to show when your target is in range. That's pretty helpful when using them from stealth or trying to set up wires precisely. We've touched a bit on elemental states already, but let's make sure you know how to use them optimally. The main purpose of elemental ammo is to apply the corresponding elemental state, and there's two main ways to do that. First, we can hit an enemy with elemental ammo repeatedly, filling up the icon until we see a white circle appear around the edge, just like the Ropecaster tie-down icon. At this point, you've applied the elemental state, and there's no point firing elemental ammo anymore. Now you want to switch to another tactic to take advantage of the state you've built up. For example, once you've frozen a machine with frost ammo, any regular impact damage you deal will be dramatically boosted. So now you want to switch to hardpoint arrows, precision arrows, or another type of high impact damage ammo to get in as much damage as possible while the machine is still frozen. But another way to build up elemental states is by triggering elemental canisters with a corresponding elemental arrow. However, unlike Forbidden West, where proccing one of these will always fully apply the state, in Zero Dawn, you won't necessarily get full buildup on some difficulties. So plan to either proc a couple of canisters at once or just finish off the buildup with a few volleys of elemental ammo. Keep in mind, elemental buildup will degrade if you don't keep the pressure on. So you might want to sneak in a quick shot here and there if you're dodging attacks just to preserve the buildup you've already got. Oh, and I think a lot of people don't know that scrappers have a different looking power cell, but it can still be triggered with shock arrows like a normal one. We already mentioned a few skills you should pick up, but we can't reset skill points in Zero Dawn like in Forbidden West. So spending your skill points wisely is really important. We break down exactly which skills you should focus on in this video right here. Huge thanks to all my friends including Arg, Moses, Justin, Twinge, Phoebe, Paris, Dusky, Blackbox, and Bowstrummer for making sure I got all the best tips in here for you. If you want to come hang out with us, you're always welcome to join my Discord server. But I'm gonna head over to that next video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you there in just a second.